Hi, my name is Sebastian, and in this video I'm going to show you how to crawl informations of websites and output them in a format such as CSV using Java, using Selenide and some new Java features. So assuming I have my blog here, so with some blog entries, blog entries that look, for example, like this. So if I look at one entry here, I have a title, I have some date and some, optional tags and things like that. And assuming I would like to have a list of all of this information, like a list of all titles with a URL, when it was written, which tags, and so on and so forth. And well, that's quite a lot, right? So if I do this manually, then this would be quite an amount of work, especially if I look over all blog entries here. I see that's a long list of things. So this would quite take a while to do this manually. And as a developer, we of course should think of, well, how can we automate things in order to make our life easier? Now, first and foremost, what I'm about to show you, just, well, please be a good citizen and don't use such techniques for something that you're not supposed to do. For example, to scrape some information where the website owner doesn't allow somebody to use these techniques, or where the information just that you use it in a proper way, what you're allowed to do. So please use that with care. That's also the reason why I'm using my blog to do this. And however, I want to show you the techniques how to do such a thing, and how Selenide and also Java features help us here. I want to start with an empty project, just how to do this with some blog entry crawler. And what I have, that's a Maven project, and I only include the dependency for Selenide, which is already, well, very helpful because it includes some techniques how to identify information that's on a website and how to follow links and so on and so forth. And what I typically also do, well, I just have a main method here, and then I go step by step just in order to see how can I get to the information and how can I automate things. For example, what do I want to do? And I think this topic is quite interesting because it requires us to think a little bit creatively, and also to think in the same way, to think somewhat structured, that we go step by step, to not be overwhelmed with too much complexity. Because it's a very different thing whether we use an API that's already nicely structured and meant to be consumed by machines, or some website where this is not the case because it's meant to be consumed by humans. If I go to my blog URL, for example, let's do this. I'll just copy the URL, and then we see, well, how do we start? At first, I would like to have a list of all of these, well, entries, and I would need to visit the entry to get all information. So let's say I want to have a list of all URLs. In order to do that, and this is now specific to the website, I go and follow this link, for example, and then I see this. So I could, well, already use that URL because I use nicely structured URLs, or I go and say, well, what would a human do? So I just go to this first page, the entry page, and then what I say, well, just please, and I usually write this in comments first, go to this page and then click this link, all blog entries, and then see, well, what happens, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's do this. First of all, I usually try to configure something using Selenide, something in Selenide like a timeout. So for example, I would like to have a long timeout of 20 seconds, because if that runs in the background and I can go and grab a coffee, then I don't want it to run into some timeout because I have time. That's totally fine. Use this, and typically I use some browser. In this case, I want to use not Firefox but Firefox, and then, well, I can already start. So let's say I would like to start with, well, opening this URL. So open is a method from Selenide, so I can go and just use this Selenide open, and typically I'm gonna have a static import for all of these methods, and then it goes and opens that page already. And then what I would like to have, now let's go step by step. I would like to, well, click that link. So now that's already done, and, well, follow that page. Okay, now this is already interesting. How do we identify this link? Well, there is, Well, there are multiple ways. It just depends on the structure of the website. Let's check this out. I hit F12 just to go for the developer tools, and you can use these elements. This is now the Chrome browser to just go and see, well, actually, how does this look? And now this is the part where we need some creativity to find out, how do I find this link, and when, how do I identify it? So sometimes you have some structure here, like HTML IDs or classes. In this case, that's not the case. So what I can do, well, I can try to figure out the structure where in the DOM it resides, or better yet, in this case, I just expect that it's called all block entries. So I'm going to search for a link that is actually, well, called this way. So usually I also try to look at the structure to have it generally right where it's located. So I have some div with some content, I have a main HTML tag, and so on and so forth. So assuming I just want to look in the main and then go through all of the links, where of course there are a lot of wrong ones. But let's see. Typically I use the Selenide dollar method. So the dollar method finds a single element, and $$ is basically a collection of elements. This comes from a jQuery, so that jQuery kind of syntax, and also it uses that syntax to select CSS selectors. So I can say, for example, main, and then I could have direct children, or just main and some link, and that will give me all of the links. So now what I would like to do, I either filter by something, or if I only want to have a single one anyway, then I'm going to find something that matches a condition. So I say, well, what is the condition? It should have something with a text, and I could have some regex or some text search. And in this case, I want to say, well, it should exactly match that text, all block entries, right? So in this way, just a link that exactly is called this way should be matched. And then I can say, well, please follow that link, right? And now one more thing, I want to just be sure that now the next website kind of like works. So I have a WebDriver. Please give me the URL of this. So just make sure that you're on the correct page. And I would say that's already it. Just to keep it simple, now I'm going to run this example and see what it does. So I always want to go step by step. And now I expect that this will open up a browser. And now we see that it very, very quickly opened up a website. And it's usually even too fast than we can have a proper look. So that's why we see some output warnings and messages. That's why I typically try to paste some information into system out, and we see, okay, that's now the current URL after we click that link is on this page, which already looks good. All right, if that is the case, we can go one step further and we say, well, now we're on this page. So now I can do the same here in my proper browser as a human and have a look over all these entries. So now I'm on this page and say, well, now please just have a look at that page and see how these links are structured, right? Because now I want to have, first of all, an overview of all of these entries. How I do this is as follows, that I say, well, please return a list of all of these URIs. So now I can already go and say, well, please outsource this into a method, something like crawl links, which then should output a list of URIs or list of strings. Doesn't matter. And now that should emit this. Okay, we're gonna do this in a second. And then here I can say, well, these URIs, please now go over them and just first of all, output them, system out. Just to make sure that all of that works. Okay, now we're on the correct page as we saw. So how do we get the information? Well, let's look at the DOM again. I want to see the structure and see I'm in the main page here, and then there, well, is a paragraph, a P tag, and then there are some links. So now we see that these links are the only links here on that page. So we could go directly there, and of course it depends on the structure of the website. Sometimes you have to do a little bit more sophisticated checking. You maybe need to check for the href or you check for the link title or something like this, or some CSS classes or some structures that help you. In this way, I go to, well, main, then directly a paragraph that's directly in main, right? And then all of the links there. So again, I'm going to use the $2 method here. I'm going to main directly to P, so P tags that are directly under main, and then all of the links, so basically all of these that matches. By the way, in JavaScript, that would be something like document query selector all. That's very similar. And now I can go and, well, filter all of them, or find them. What I want in this way is to actually just say, well, stream and map them into, well, what I want to have. Just use either the link text. We can do this first to say, well, please just get the text of the link. So that just gives me a list of all of my blog entries. And then let's say, please output this into a list and return it. So which would be the case, well, it doesn't quite work for the text. So this would have been just a test for me, but it doesn't work because it wants actually a URI. So let's immediately go into the attribute of the href and wrap it into a URI.create. So then it should go to find all of that, all of these attributes here, create a URI out of it, and then go through this list. Okay, let's try it if we did everything correctly. And then we see it's going to open up the page again. It's going to follow that all blog entries list, and then it should output, well, a list of URIs. So this already looks very good. And now I could go and take this further. Now what I also like to do is I like to do it, as I said, step by step. So first of all, I don't want to always scrape all of these links. Then that would be too much, and I want to be a nice citizen. So let's say, well, let's just limit it for 1. So then I could just print this again, and then I could go and say, well, for example, please map this into something else. And now that is actually where our JDK 14 plus version feature comes in. So I want to use Java records to basically represent one of these entries. So if I go here, I say, well, what could be interesting? And that's, of course, now a question what you like to have here. Let's say I'm interested in the title, in the date when it was written, and in these tags. And that's going to be the information. And of course, also the URI, just to see it later on. What I use, that's the Oracle documentation of Java 14 plus, so the newer version of JDK 14 or newer, has a feature called records, and I'm going to use this record that is basically a data holder. So that is just something like, well, here his example shows it, something like a final class that just contains some immutable values. So instead of writing some boilerplate code here, I just say, well, have this record that consists of these two properties here that are always, well, final, that don't change, and that I can simply create with some toString methods, with some constructors, and so on and so forth. So this is helpful, and I will use this feature now to just create a record that I then will crawl here. I call this record entry, and this will contain, well, a title, a URI. Now I want, of course, to have a proper type, a date, local date, and I want to have a set of strings that is my tags. And that's it. And now this record is actually empty because this already will create the default or make the default features available. So I then have a method for these, I have toString methods, and so on and so forth. I have a constructor, and that's already enough. Okay, cool. What I want to have now is a second method that crawls individual pages and that creates these records. So what I do in this case, I say, well, instead of for each, please just map this and take the URI and say, well, let's say crawl entry page or something like this, which then is supposed to create one, which is then supposed to emit these entries. Okay. And then in this way, if I have some, let's further use it immediately. Assuming I would like to output this now. If I have my entry system out, then I would like to say, well, entry title. I use the method here. And then, well, let's just do the title for now. Then I can have some further information for a CSV structure, for example. Let's use a nicer method reference here. And just make sure that I have objects non-null, because now what I will do later in this crawl entry page, in case there's some error, this might actually return null. All right, so let's see what we do now. We go to an individual page, and now I would like to scrape all this information. So let's start very easy. I would like to have, well, new entry with a title, and the rest, well, should not be available for now. So I just say, well, the rest is not interesting for me now. I just want to have the title here. And how do I get a title of a single entry? Well, let's have a look at the DOM again. And this is going to be an H2. All right, so again, it really depends. Maybe I have some other H2s here. I hopefully don't. So let's see what I can do. I can go and now find a single element. Now that's the single dollar method here. And go to, what had we, main page, I think, and directly H2. All right, and then get text. What I can also do is get own text, but I will see that this actually causes some issues. The difference is the get own text is the text that is included directly in the element, not including child elements. So for example, if I have an H2 and then some strong field or some code element or some nested tags, get own text would only get the parent one, but I want to have all of them just without some formatting, which already is helpful here. So I have a string title, and that should be it. And then I hope and assume that now this works limited on 1 or 2 entry pages. So I'm going to run this again, and now I expect that I already have a small list of titles here. Let's see what this does, and you see it's very quickly. And well, that's what happens sometimes. It is wrong. Okay, what is wrong here? So now what happened, we can actually see all blog entries. This is the name of the link, which is confusing, but it is also the name of, well, this headline here, right? Because we actually tried to get this H2 element, and here that's a different one. So that's a typical mistake if we still see the information of a different page. Well, if you paid attention, you probably saw, well, of course, obviously I'm still on the other page. So what I have to do, first of all, I have to open up this new URI here. And then I hopefully, I can say to URL, or to say to string, that's easier. Then hopefully now it works if I just follow these entry pages. Now in this case, it should be 2 entry pages, and then to see what happens. Now this will happen to you as well. So if you try to load some pages here and sometimes you just end up on the wrong one, then it helps to either to do some debugging for yourself or to print out more information to see, well, on which page am I actually? And now we already see, okay, this is the first title, this is the second one. So obviously this works now. Let's see in the list of all blog entries. Yes, that's correct. And now we got the title from the entry page. We also could get it here, but now it's more interesting because now we have more access to the information, such as these tags and also the date. Okay, let's have a look how this works. Let's start with the date. So string, I call this date string because this is going to be interesting, because obviously I want to have a proper Java type, and this date is just printed in some readable form. So it says Monday, or a day of the week, comma, and then month, and all of it lowercase and things like that. So this is a little bit tricky, and sometimes we again need to be a little bit flexible how to do this. So what I want to find out first is, well, where to find this date string. Let's see, that's in the main page, and main directly span. It has a class because it's formatted here, class date, okay. Span class date, and then say, well, please get the text. So that's easy. What I also like to do always is to use a trim method. So this helps just in case there is some extra space. And now it's interesting because now I need a formatter. So in Java, with a Java datetime API, I can have something like a datetime formatter. So the datetime formatter allows me to, for example, create one of a pattern. So for example, of some pattern and so on and so forth. This actually will not work for these type of information. Why? Well, because it actually is case insensitive, or usually it is case sensitive, and then it will not work with the lowercase option here. What I do in these cases generally, if I'm not quite sure how it will work, then instead of always trying it out and loading the pages anew, loading it anew, I just write either a simple JUnit test or another simple class with some main method just to try out, okay, what is actually the right way to do this. I will just do this here as well now just to show you. And usually I use some JUnit example. Now I actually didn't even include it. But it doesn't matter. I can just have a main class and say, well, how does this work? So if I have a string similar to this without opening up the website 10 times, let's see what I can do here. So assuming that is my date string, I now would like to have, well, a pattern of my datetime formatter, such as this is the day of the week, uppercase E 4 times, because it's written Monday, right? Then a comma, then, well, usually uppercase, but now it's lowercase June, but let's see how we do with this. For the month, then the day, and then the year. All right, okay, let's see how this works. If I say I would like to have the formatter of this pattern, formatter, and then I would like to parse this, for example, to parse the date string into a local date. So then I have my local date, and I can print this. This should not be the parse, but the from the temporal. And I can run this. Okay, now I already know that this is actually not going to work. Why? Because this formatter will have a problem of running this pattern. Why? Because it says, well, text so-and-so could not be parsed. Why? Actually, well, because of multiple reasons. It's lowercase, and I need to specify the locale, and so on and so forth. So what I have to do here is I have to use a more complex approach using a builder, a datetime formatter builder. And then I can say, use this or parse this using case insensitive formats. And I would like to have a pattern, append a whole pattern. I can also append this individually. So this way of building is very powerful. And then I can say, well, just build the formatter and with a locale, an English locale. I need the locale, or just to be sure, because this is actually written in English. And then I have this formatter here. And then I can now, okay, I deleted it unfortunately, date string, local date from. I can now parse this into a date. So I'm still in my test method, or actually the second main method, just to try it out faster. And now let's see, what is now the problem? Date could not be parsed. So let's see, Monday, this should be June, this should be this, there is no comma. And then there's the year. So this is now a little bit tricky just to get it right, which now it works, which is why I actually outsourced this into a method. Otherwise, you see the turnaround time is too high to always try it again and try it again. Okay, so now we have this working here. So I can actually take this and just use the date string there, and then use the date with my entry here. URI, date, and set of tags. Actually, I know the URI already as well. I have it just from this method. And then that's the last thing, the set of my tags. Okay, how to get them? What I can do already, I can try this out before I use these tags. I can say, well, just use this. I already printed in a CSV-like format. Use it with a date And also, what was the other one with the URI? So let's say I want to have a title. Next thing should be URI. And then next thing should be a date. And then the tags at the end. Okay. And just to have a nice structure here ready as well, I say, well, please print out the first line of my CSV, which is a title, URI, date, and tags. All right. Okay, now I would like to run this class again, and I go to these two entry pages, and now I hope that I have the title available, the URI, and at least the date already for these two example entries. The tags are still empty, and then I can see, well, how this works. Okay, so ignore all the system error prints. I have the title, URI, and, well, date here. The date is just, that's misformatted. I could also, well, have a look whether my URI would then include some semicolons. So this might be interesting, whether I would need to encode this further. For the sake of this example, it should be fine. I have the date here and then some tags. All right. So in this way, I now continue and say, well, actually, go to this page now, find out the tags. How do they look? Let's try it out. Okay, luckily we have another class here in our HTML elements, so span class tags, and then I can go and see, okay, these are actually links to another page. If that wouldn't be the case, I could also go and find out by the href whether that is the case, whether I need to check it further, which element to filter or to find. All right, in this way I can just go similar to what I had before. Now take again the $2, find all the elements, span .tags, and then all the links thereof. And then of these, well, just go and say, actually, for all of them, get the text. So of these elements, get the text of the link. And by the way, I don't want to have this hashtag here. I just want them without. So please replace this as well. Then I have a clean view, and also please trim them just in case. And then I can go and say, well, put this to a set that is called tags. And then this is what I want to have. All right. So just a little bit slowly again, I use the $2 methods to query all of these links within such a structure. So all of these two, I stream and map them. I map them to just get the text, which then goes over them and says, well, hashtag Quarkus, hashtag testing. And then I replace the hashtag with nothing, so just to strip this off. And then I have these two texts. So that is not the link. I'm not interested in this link here. I'm interested in the text of the link. And then I emit them as the text. Let's run this again and see if this works. And then later on, we see how to get rid of the error printing here, finally. So it again goes through all these pages, and I hope this was almost the last time. So now we see, okay, all of this works, including the date. And well, now this is printed differently. Why? Well, because I just do the printing of Java, which is the toString method of a set in this case. So I want to print this differently. I say, well, please use string join with, in this case, because it's a CSV, I sometimes use a different character for different structures. So it's kind of like a sublist of strings where I use the colon now. And that hopefully works now better. And what I will do now, I actually, instead of running this again, I will already run it in a command line. So this is another thing that's quite helpful, and that's why I wanted to show you how to extract this into a CSV. Why? Because ultimately I want to use that information easier, and I could go and copy and paste the correct output here, but it's just easier to say, well, just separate this from the error or from all these warning information, and therefore I simply want to run it in the command line. How does this work? I typically use a plugin such as the Maven Shade plugin. That will just able to run a jar or to create a jar file that I can run then with a main class, for example this one, my crawler, and I run this and build this with JDK 16. So now what I will do is just to say, well, please build this together with Maven clean package, and it includes some Maven shade, some jar that already includes all of the dependencies that I need. So now that's a little bit bigger, but it's okay because it includes Selenium and everything that I need. And I can run this now with target Selenium and my shaded jar. And then you will see that now the output, of course, is in the command line. And then what I can do, and if I did everything correctly, I can simply separate all of these things by using command line pipes. So still now we have the same problem like in the IDE. Everything is kind of cluttered and we don't really see what that means. But I can say, well, just emit this to the output CSV. And now it looks a little bit differently because now the system error is going to stay in the command line. We see this, as just some notifications. We could print some other exceptions. So sometimes, for example, let me show you the code. Inside these methods, I say, well, just do a try and catch block. In case it didn't work, return null. That's why I check for null sometimes here. And then I can print some further information. So for example, catch all here and say print the stack trace and just continue, or do some other log. And return null. So that's also a possibility, but it will still just emit all the information that is non-null here. Now, if I check out this CSV file, I see that now here the output is not included anymore. This is only the error output. And now the output in my CSV file is clean. And I can see, okay, actually this includes everything that I would like to have. And I can use it, of course, now in the command line in some text editor, or include it in some other format. I can see how this is formatted using the semicolon, for example, and then I see all this information. And then I can go further and just run all of these examples with all of the overview pages. But again, what I mentioned before, please try to be a nice citizen and not to overflow the server. What I also sometimes do is to include sleeps between these pages just to not create too much load. Why? Because for us, we don't have to care if we have the automation. So if it just runs by itself, it's fine if it takes half an hour because I can go and grab a coffee and do something else. And then just this automation will scrape all of this information, everything that I need, and then just output that in a different format. Then I can use the CSV file, or of course I do a different output, whatever I need in my Java code or in some other technology, and I can further use this. So this is how you can use Selenide, which is based on Selenium, together with Java and Java 14 plus features such as Java records in order to crawl some information of websites. Again, please be a nice citizen when you use such techniques, but I think it's a helpful tool in our toolbox of being a developer. I hope this was helpful. If so, I would really appreciate it if you liked the video, and thanks a lot for watching. Bye.